We've been told the universe is just the way it is. But when you change a few basic numbers by the tiniest amount, there are no stars anymore, no planets, no chemistry, and no us. Close examination shows that the universe seems improbably balanced on a knife edge. Was the universe made for life, or does it only look that way because we're here to ask that question? Physics, Consciousness and Reality, Dickie Dredd and Nigel Adams. And we are on part 33 in the video series and still in chapter 4, Mathematics, Beauty and Limits. And today we're going to talk about the Anthropic Principle, fine-tuning, necessity and coincidence. One of the strangest puzzles in modern science is not about what we observe, but about the very conditions that make observation possible. Physics describes a universe with a handful of constants: the strength of gravity, the mass of the electron, the speed of light, the cosmological constant. And these numbers seem oddly balanced. Adjust any of them by even a small fraction, and the universe would not contain stars, galaxies, or the chemistry of life. Instead, it would collapse back in on itself, fly apart in a sterile spray of particles, or settle into a bland soup incapable of structure. The fact that we are here at all depends on these numbers lying in an extraordinarily narrow range. This is the problem of fine-tuning, and the Anthropic Principle is one way to address it. The phrase was coined by Brandon Carter in the 1970s, though the intuition goes back much further. At simplest, the principle states the universe looks the way it does because if it didn't, we would not be here to see it. That sounds trivial, but once you push into the details, it becomes deeply unsettling. The so-called weak Anthropic Principle is essentially a statement of selection bias. We should not be surprised that we find ourselves in a life-permitting universe, because only in such a universe could observers arise. In other words, the dice may have been rolled many times, but we only ever wake up in the game that lets us exist. A strong Anthropic Principle goes further, suggests that the universe must be such as to allow observers, that life and consciousness are not accidents but are baked into the fabric of reality. This edges closer to teleology, the idea of purpose, and makes many physicists uncomfortable. Yet it has its defenders, who argue that our existence is too improbable to ignore. Teleology is the word I meant there, not teleology. Teleology. The Anthropic Principle often appears in discussions of the cosmological constant. This parameter, which controls the rate at which the universe expands, is astonishingly small, but not zero. If it were a little larger, galaxies would never form. If it were negative and too large in magnitude, the universe would have collapsed before life could arise. The fact that it falls within the narrow life-permitting range looks suspiciously like fine-tuning. One possible explanation is the multiverse. If there are countless universes, each with different values of the fundamental constants, then it is no surprise that at least one is compatible with life. We happen to find ourselves in such a universe because there is nowhere else we could be. In this picture, the Anthropic Principle is not mystical but statistical. We are a random sample from the subset of universes where observers can evolve. Not everyone is persuaded. The multiverse is an elegant idea, but currently untestable. Some physicists regard it as a cop-out, an excuse for avoiding the harder work of finding deeper physical principles that explain why the constants have the values they do. Others argue that even if the multiverse exists, evoking it to explain fine-tuning is circular. It explains why life is possible only by assuming the existence of a framework in which life-permitting universes can arise. The Anthropic Principle also crops up closer to home, in planetary science. Earth sits in the so-called Goldilocks zone, close enough to the sun for liquid water, but not so close that it boils away. Our large moon stabilises the planet's axial tilt, preventing wild swings in climate. Our magnetic field shields us from solar radiation. Our crust is rich in the elements needed for complex chemistry. Each of these factors narrows the odds of a life-supporting world, making Earth look improbably lucky. The Anthropic Principle forces a choice between three broad attitudes. One is brute fact, the constants are what they are, and no further explanation is needed. Another is necessity, perhaps deeper mathematics or symmetries determine the values uniquely, and we have yet to discover the laws that show why they could not have been otherwise. The third is selection, either through a multiverse or some other ensemble. Many possibilities exist, and we happen to be in the one that permits us. Philosophically, the Anthropic Principle is fascinating because it blurs the line between description and perspective. The weak version is logically undeniable, but feels unsatisfying. It explains why we observe a life-friendly universe by pointing out that non-life-friendly universes would not be observed. The strong version feels more potent, but threatens to smuggle purpose back into physics. Some thinkers split the difference by suggesting that once the basic scaffolding of the laws is in place, complexity and awareness may be inevitable. Life is not the goal, but a natural outcome. There are also connections to quantum mechanics. In some interpretations, observation is not passive but active. Measurement helps shape what becomes real, for example, whether a particle is a wave or a point-like object. If this is so, then the existence of observers is not just a curiosity, but a necessity for the unfolding of reality. This is controversial, but it shows how easily the anthropic puzzle slides into questions of consciousness. For the purposes of this book, the Anthropic Principle matters because it links physics, philosophy, and meaning. It highlights the strange fit between cosmos and consciousness. Whether you see it as a tautology, a clue to deeper laws of evidence of multiverse, it insists that the fact we are here is not trivial. Conditions that make life possible or delicately poised, and any worldview that tries to explain reality must grapple with that fact. Eastern thought has long assumed that life and consciousness are not incidental. In Buddhist and Vedantic perspectives, awareness is not a late-stage accident, but part of the ground of reality. From that angle, the Anthropic Principle reads less like a puzzle and more like a reminder. Of course, the universe and consciousness belong together, because they are not two separate things at all. In the end, the Anthropic Principle does not solve the riddle of existence. It sharpens it. Why is the universe so finely balanced for life? Why are we here to ask the question? Whether the answer lies in brute fact, necessity, selection, or something stranger, the Anthropic Principle is a signpost. It tells us that the story of reality cannot be told without reckoning with observers, with us. So the universe appears astonishingly well suited to life. We still don't know why. One of the biggest mysteries in physics isn't how the universe works, but why rules allow observers to exist at all. Which means the problem isn't just why the constants have their particular values. It might be whether consciousness is a coincidence, an inevitability, or something woven into reality from the beginning. Are we simply living in the right universe, or are we part of the reason it looks the way it does? Okay, next up, still in Chapter 4, Mathematics, Beauty and Limits, and we're on Section 31, Symmetry and the Shape of Laws.